being tracked in the Middle East, used by Hezbollah affiliated groups, have messages now going on about rockets being fired at bases, and quote, revenge has begun. We'll continue to monitor that at this hour. Let's bring in our panel early. Washington Post columnist Marc Thiessen, Susan Page, Washington bureau chief at USA Today, Guy Benson, political editor at townhall.com and host of the Guy Benson Show on Fox News Radio. Mark, obviously, we know Iran's going to push back, punch back at some point. The question is how this may be starting. Your thoughts on where we are? Well,
the Iranian foreign minister today accused the United States of committing an act of aggression, and we're accused us of state-sponsored terrorism. This is, that takes, to use a choice word, chutzpah. This premier state sponsor of terror in the world. Soleimani was the terror mastermind, and Trump showed enormous restraint. They're the ones who committed acts of aggression. First, they hit Japanese and Norwegian tankers. We didn't respond. Then they attacked a U.S. drone. We didn't respond. Then they attacked Saudi oil facilities. We didn't respond except in the cyber domain. Every time the president showed enormous restraint, he drew a red line. He said, if you kill an American citizen, you will pay a price. They killed an American citizen. They paid the price. And he's warned them again. If you retaliate for this, you're going to pay an even greater price, and they better take it seriously. Late this afternoon, Susan, the Gang of Eight up on Capitol Hill getting a briefing from top administration officials. Some of them have been talking about the briefing or lack of briefing prior to this attack. Take a listen.
I've been in the Gang of Eight during the Obama years. When Osama bin Laden was taken out, I was not told in advance.
This president's foreign policy, I describe it in two words: erratic and just wrong.
I happened to have been with the president down in Mar-a-Lago the night that this took place. The world is safer today because this president took action.
I think that what it shows is a national security process that is either non-existent or dysfunctional. President making decisions by the seat of his pants, and the result is that war with Iran is more likely.
So, bottom line, there's a lot of skepticism up on Capitol Hill. We don't know what they're being told or what the fallout will be, but that's true.
But we did see the administration move on several fronts today to try to address these questions about whether there was, in fact, an imminent threat or whether this was just the kind of ongoing threat that Soleimani has long posed to U.S. forces. We had the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, the National Security Advisor all out today talking without many details, making the case that this was a justifiable decision made by the president. I think we'll know more after the Gang of Eight come out today, after today's briefing, after additional briefings on the Hill tomorrow. But it's important, and it reflects to some degree the experience that Washington had in the run-up to the Iraq War, where the assertions by that administration of intelligence findings that there were the threat of weapons of mass destruction turned out not to be true. And I think a lot of policymakers now feel like that more skepticism is warranted when we head into a situation that holds the possibility of real military conflict ahead.
And that is fair. There have been several people, Tucker Carlson among them, on this channel, saying Republicans went from questioning the deep state to buying everything that was being said from the intelligence community about this.
Yeah, and I think a lot of Democrats who spent the last 2 years saying the intelligence community is sacrosanct, should never be criticized because that would be un-American, are now saying, well, hang on just a second, maybe they got this wrong like they did in Iraq. So they've switched sides here, which is always a fun switcheroo in this town. I'm curious to know what the intelligence is. I think it would be beneficial for the public to at least know more about that. But I think we can simply look to Iran's actions in the last week or so. It is inconceivable and unfathomable that Soleimani was not plotting more American deaths, because that's what he always does and has done for years. And as Mark mentioned, there was a red line drawn. I think Iran felt like they could get away with almost anything with impunity. They got used to that for 8 years, and frankly, for most of this administration. And then President Trump, in an erratic way, if Chuck Schumer wants to use that word, surprised them with a very unpleasant surprise that certainly got their attention and will hopefully have a deterrent effect.
The question now is about the Iraqis and what they do. Take a listen to the Iraqi Prime Minister and the Defense Secretary.
Yesterday, we received a letter from the U.S. commander about the withdrawal of troops. But then, within 4 to 5 hours, we were told that the letter was wrong. The letter clearly indicates a withdrawal from Iraq. It was directly sent to the Iraqi foreign minister and Iraq's ambassador in Washington, D.C., and other parties.
Our policy has not changed. We are not leaving Iraq. And a draft unsigned letter does not constitute a policy change. and there is no signed letter, to the best of my knowledge.
It was messy yesterday about this letter that got out there, but there's been misreporting about the Iraqi parliament and what actually happened, a non-binding vote by Shia lawmakers mostly, and you know, the Kurds and the Sunnis were not a part of it.
Yeah, no, I mean, Congress here in Washington, D.C., Congress passes resolutions, a sense of Congress resolutions all the time that have no power, and everybody ignores them. But the Iraqi parliament does it, and all of a sudden it's the end of the world. I mean, look, the reality is that, as Guy pointed out, I think our deterrence posture had weakened because Trump had been so reticent in carrying out a military attack. And so, as David Petraeus said, with this strike, Trump restored deterrence. But now he has to maintain deterrence. And talking about withdrawal is very, very damaging to that, because the Iranians see that their goal is for us to leave Iraq, and they think Trump's goal is to leave Iraq too, and so they are going to be emboldened if they think that they can push him out.
Very quickly, Susan, politically, for Democrats, obviously they're saying that this opens up a hornet's nest, but there are some who are being painted, at least by the other side, as mourning the death of Soleimani, and that's a political danger as well.
Yes, I mean, I actually think there are very few Americans of any stripe who do not believe that this was an evil man who posed a threat to Americans. The question that I think Democrats are raising is, was this a proportionate response that leads to consequences that make sense for the United States security?
All right, panel, we'll see you a bit later in the show. Up next, Joe Biden lays out his argument against President Trump's Iran policy, calling him dangerously incompetent.